Welcome. Get comfortable, close your eyes if you'd like, and prepare to drift off as we explore 30 unbelievable facts about SpaceX that sound like science fiction. Tonight, we're going on a gentle journey through one of the most ambitious companies in human history. A company that catches rockets from the sky, sends astronauts to space, and dreams of making humanity a multi-planetary species. But behind the headlines and the spectacular launches, there are stories you probably haven't heard. Stories of failure and redemption, of bold gambles and last-minute saves, of a billionaire who once tried to buy rockets from Russia and ended up building his own instead. So settle in, relax, and let these remarkable facts wash over you like waves. There's no need to remember everything. Just let the words flow, and allow yourself to drift towards sleep as we explore the strange and wonderful world of SpaceX. Fact number 1. The failed Russia trip. Our story begins not in California, not in a gleaming factory or a launch pad, but in Moscow. In the early 2000s, Elon Musk had a dream. But it wasn't the dream you might expect. He didn't want to build rockets. He wanted to buy them. You see, Musk had conceived of something called the Mars Oasis project. The idea was simple, or at least it seemed simple at the time. He wanted to send a small greenhouse to Mars. A tiny oasis of life on the red planet. Just enough to capture the world's imagination and reinvigorate public interest in space exploration. But to do this, he needed a rocket. And rockets, as you might imagine, are expensive. So Musk did what any rational entrepreneur might do. He went shopping. He traveled to Russia with a small team, including future SpaceX leaders, to meet with companies that had old intercontinental ballistic missiles sitting around. These were Dnepr rockets, converted ICBMs from the Soviet era, Cold War relics that could, in theory, be repurposed to launch things into space. The meetings did not go well. The Russians, according to those who were there, didn't take Musk seriously. Here was this young internet millionaire, fresh off selling PayPal, wanting to buy their rockets to send plants to Mars. They thought it was a joke. They quoted him prices that were astronomical, and when he tried to negotiate, they laughed at him. One story goes that during a meeting, one of the Russian chief designers actually spat at Musk's shoes. On the flight back to the United States, dejected and frustrated, Musk pulled out his laptop. He started doing calculations. The raw materials that go into a rocket, he realized, cost only about 2% of the typical rocket price. The rest was manufacturing, overhead, and profit margins inflated by decades of cost-plus government contracts. If he could build a rocket from scratch, designing it for efficiency and reusability, he could undercut everyone. By the time the plane landed, he had made his decision. He wasn't going to buy rockets. He was going to build them. That failed trip to Russia, that moment of rejection and humiliation, became the spark that ignited SpaceX. Sometimes our greatest ventures begin not with success, but with a door slammed in our face. Fact number 2, the saving grace contract. Now let's move forward a few years. SpaceX is real. Musk has poured millions of his own money into it. He's hired brilliant engineers. They've built their first rocket, the Falcon 1. It's small by rocket standards, designed to prove that a private company can launch things into orbit cheaply and reliably. But there's a problem. The rocket keeps failing. The first launch, in March 2006, ends in failure just seconds after liftoff. A fuel leak causes an engine fire. The rocket crashes into the Pacific Ocean. The second launch, in March 2007, also fails. The rocket makes it further this time, but a roll control issue causes it to tumble. It doesn't reach orbit. The third launch, in August 2008, gets closer. So close, but a timing issue causes the first and second stages to collide during separation. Once again, no orbit. By this point, SpaceX is running out of money. Musk has invested over $100 million of his own fortune. The company has enough resources for maybe one more attempt. Just one. If the fourth launch fails, SpaceX will likely declare bankruptcy. The dream will be over. Engineers are working around the clock on a tiny island in the Pacific called Omelek, part of the Kwajalein Atoll. The pressure is immense. Meanwhile, something else is happening. NASA has been watching. Despite the failures, they've been impressed by SpaceX's approach, their innovation, their determination. NASA has a problem of their own. The space shuttle is being retired, and they need a way to resupply the International Space Station. They've created a program called Commercial Orbital Transportation Services, or COTS, to encourage private companies to develop cargo delivery systems. In September 2008, SpaceX launches their fourth Falcon 1 rocket. This time, everything works. The rocket flies beautifully. It reaches orbit. It's the first privately developed liquid-fuel rocket to achieve this. The team erupts in celebration, but they're still nearly out of money. Then, just months later in December 2008, NASA announces something remarkable. They're awarding SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to fly 12 resupply missions to the International Space Station. It's a lifeline. It's salvation. It's validation. This contract doesn't just save SpaceX from bankruptcy. It establishes them as a legitimate player in the space industry. Looking back, it's extraordinary how close SpaceX came to the edge. One more failure, a few more months without that contract, and the company that would go on to revolutionize spaceflight might never have survived. Sometimes success isn't about never failing. It's about failing, learning, and surviving just long enough for your breakthrough to arrive. Fact number 3, Dragon's hidden name. Let's talk about the Dragon spacecraft for a moment. You've probably seen it. It's that gumdrop-shaped capsule that carries cargo and astronauts to the International Space Station. Sleek, modern, covered in white thermal protection. It looks like something from a science fiction movie. But do you know where the name came from? The Dragon spacecraft was named after a song. Specifically, it was named after Puff, the Magic Dragon. That gentle folk song from the 1960s about a dragon named Puff who lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist with a boy named Jackie Paper. It's a children's song, whimsical and innocent. So why would Musk name his spacecraft after it? The answer is delightfully petty. In the early days of SpaceX, Musk faced enormous skepticism. Critics said it was impossible for a private company to build a spacecraft capable of reaching the International Space Station. They said he was chasing fantasy. They said his dreams were make-believe. Some reportedly used phrases suggesting his plans were as imaginary as, well, a magic dragon. So when SpaceX succeeded, when they actually built a spacecraft that could dock with the ISS, Musk decided to name it Dragon as a response to those critics. It was his way of saying, you called my dreams impossible, you compared them to fairy tales, and now that fairy tale is real and flying to space. The Magic Dragon is real, and it's delivering cargo to astronauts orbiting Earth. There's something charming about this. Here's one of the most advanced pieces of technology ever created. A spacecraft that has flown dozens of missions, that has carried astronauts, that represents the cutting edge of human spaceflight capability, and it's named after a children's song as an inside joke. It's a reminder that even in the most serious endeavors, there's room for humor, for personality, for thumbing your nose at the people who said it couldn't be done. The Dragon has evolved over the years. The original Dragon cargo spacecraft has been supplemented by Crew Dragon, which carries people. Together, they've become one of NASA's most reliable vehicles for accessing the space station. And every time one launches, every time it docks, it's a reminder that sometimes the best response to skepticism isn't anger. It's achievement. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of whimsy. Fact number 4. No designated mission control. Picture mission control in your mind. What do you see? Probably rows and rows of computer stations, each with multiple monitors. Serious people in headsets, sitting in a darkened room with a giant screen at the front showing the rocket or spacecraft. You're probably thinking of NASA's famous mission control in Houston, with its theater-style seating and that iconic big board. That's what we've been conditioned to expect. That's what spaceflight is supposed to look like. Now imagine something completely different. Imagine monitoring a crewed spaceflight, a mission carrying actual human beings to the International Space Station, from an open-plan office. Not a dedicated room. Not a bunker with redundant systems and dramatic lighting. Just an office. near the kitchen, where people walk by to get coffee. That's exactly what SpaceX did for their first crewed mission. When Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken launched aboard Crew Dragon in May 2020, becoming the first astronauts to fly on a commercial spacecraft, SpaceX didn't monitor them from some elaborate control center. They did it from their regular workspace at the Hawthorne headquarters in California. Engineers sat at their normal desks, in their normal office, watching the mission unfold. This tells you something fundamental about SpaceX's philosophy. They don't believe in building things just because that's how they've always been done. NASA's mission control rooms are magnificent, certainly. They're purpose-built facilities that reflect decades of spaceflight heritage. But SpaceX asked a different question. Do we actually need that? Or can we do this more efficiently? Their answer was that modern technology, modern software, modern communication systems, these things don't require a cathedral. They require good engineers, good screens, and good connections. The romance of mission control, the theater of it, that's wonderful. But it's not strictly necessary. You can safely monitor a spacecraft from an office if your systems are robust enough. There's something almost casual about it that would have been unthinkable in earlier eras of spaceflight. And yet, it worked perfectly. The mission was successful. The astronauts reached the station, spent months there, and returned safely. All monitored from that office near the kitchen. Sometimes progress means stripping away the ceremony and focusing on what actually matters. Sometimes the future looks less like a movie set and more like a place where someone might stop to make a sandwich between checking on astronauts orbiting at 17,000 miles per hour. Fact number 5. Musk's $100 million gamble. Let's rewind to 2002. Elon Musk has just sold PayPal to eBay. His share of that sale has netted him around $180 million. He's 31 years old. He's wealthy beyond most people's wildest dreams. He could retire. He could invest conservatively. He could live comfortably for the rest of his life without working another day. Instead, he decides to bet $100 million on rockets. $100 million. That's not money he's borrowing or raising from investors. That's his own money. Money he earned. Money he could lose. And he's betting it on an industry that has bankrupted countless companies before him. An industry dominated by massive aerospace corporations and government agencies with virtually unlimited budgets. Think about that decision for a moment. A third of everything he has poured into a venture that everyone tells him is impossible. The aerospace industry executives he talks to think he's delusional. His friends think he's making a terrible mistake. There's no clear path to profitability. There's no guarantee that his rockets will work. There's every possibility that he'll lose everything. But Musk has done his calculations. He's looked at the cost structure of the rocket industry and seen inefficiency everywhere. He believes that by approaching rocket design from first principles, by vertically integrating manufacturing, by designing for reusability, he can reduce costs by an order of magnitude. He believes there's a future where spaceflight is affordable, where satellites are cheap to launch, where maybe eventually humans can become a multi-planetary species. Still, believing something and risking $100 million are two very different things. This isn't a small bet. This isn't diversifying a portfolio. This is putting a massive portion of his wealth into one basket labeled rocket company and hoping it doesn't explode. Literally. And for years, it looks like it might. Remember those early Falcon 1 failures? Each one burns through millions of dollars. Each one brings SpaceX closer to bankruptcy. By 2008, Musk has invested everything he said he would and more. He's also putting money into Tesla, which is also struggling. He's running out of funds. He's personally broke by some measures, having to borrow money to pay rent. That $100 million gamble very nearly fails. If the fourth Falcon 1 launch doesn't succeed, it's over. If NASA doesn't award that contract, it's over. The fact that SpaceX survived and eventually thrived doesn't make that initial decision any less audacious. It just makes it, in retrospect, one of the boldest bets in the history of private spaceflight. Sometimes fortune favors the bold, but being bold doesn't guarantee fortune. It just means you're willing to risk everything for what you believe is possible. Fact number 6, the Falcon name. Here's another naming story for you, because apparently SpaceX has a thing for pop culture references. You see those rockets launching, the Falcon 9 carrying satellites and astronauts, the massive Falcon Heavy with its triple booster configuration, and you might assume they're named after the bird. The Falcon, that swift predator, that symbol of speed and precision. It would make sense, wouldn't it? Rockets are fast. Falcons are fast. Simple. But no, that's not it at all. The Falcon rockets are named after the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. That beat-up smuggling ship piloted by Han Solo. That vessel that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs, whatever that means. That ship that doesn't look like much, but has it where it counts. Musk is, by all accounts, a huge Star Wars fan. He grew up watching those films. Like many children of his generation, he dreamed of space because of what he saw on screen. And when it came time to name his rockets, he didn't reach for something dignified or historical. He reached for something that meant something to him personally. Something that represented the underdog, making the impossible run. There's something perfect about this. The Millennium Falcon in Star Wars is not a sleek, pristine military vessel. It's a working ship. It breaks down. It needs constant repairs. Han Solo is always tinkering with it, always coaxing it to perform. And yet, when it matters, it comes through. It's fast, it's capable, and it gets the job done. SpaceX's Falcon rockets have that same energy. Especially in the early days, they were scrappy. They were built on a budget that traditional aerospace companies would have considered laughable. They didn't have the heritage or the funding of United Launch Alliance or Arianespace. They were the underdog, the upstart, the company that wasn't supposed to succeed. And just like the Millennium Falcon, they came through. The Falcon 9 has become one of the most reliable rockets in history. It's launched hundreds of times. It's revolutionized the industry with its reusability. The Falcon Heavy, when it debuted, became the most powerful operational rocket in the world. These aren't just rockets. They're proof that sometimes the scrappy newcomer can outperform the establishment. So every time a Falcon rocket launches, every time you see that name, remember where it came from. Remember that it's named after a fictional smuggling ship from a space fantasy film. Remember that even in the serious business of spaceflight, there's room for the dreams we had as children. The dreams of making that impossible jump to lightspeed. The dreams of proving that a beat-up ship with a determined crew can outrun the Empire. Fact number 7, the first private orbit. We've already talked about the fourth Falcon 1 launch, but let's return to it for a moment, because this achievement deserves its own space, its own contemplation. September 28th, 2008. A small island in the Pacific. A rocket that's failed 3 times before, and history waiting to be made. Up until this moment, every single rocket that has successfully reached orbit has been funded by a government. Soviet Union, United States, France, China, Japan, India. Nations with treasuries. Nations with space agencies. Nations with thousands of engineers and billions of dollars. Never has a private company, funded with private money, built with private resources, managed to do this. Many have tried. All have failed. The Falcon 1 is tiny by modern standards. It's only about 70 feet tall. It can carry maybe 400 pounds to low Earth orbit. It's the smallest rocket SpaceX will ever build. But on this day, it represents everything. Success means SpaceX survives. Failure means bankruptcy. Success means proving that private spaceflight is possible. Failure means it might be decades before anyone tries again. The rocket lifts off. The first stage burns perfectly, then separates. The second stage ignites. This is where the previous attempts failed, in these crucial moments during staging. But this time, everything works. The rocket keeps climbing. It keeps accelerating. Minutes pass. The team in California watches the telemetry. The rocket reaches the speed necessary for orbit. It shuts down its engine. It coasts. And then confirmation. Orbit achieved. The control room erupts. Engineers are crying, hugging, screaming with joy. Musk himself breaks down in tears. This is vindication. This is proof. This is the barrier breaking. For the first time in the entire history of spaceflight, a private company has reached orbit. Think about what this means. For 50 years, space has belonged to governments. It's been a realm of national prestige, of military programs, of massive public investments. And now, a company with a few hundred employees, founded by someone who learned rocket science from textbooks, has done what only nations could do before. This moment opens the door. It shows that space doesn't have to be the exclusive domain of superpowers. It demonstrates that with smart engineering, with modern technology, with determination, a private company can access space. Everything that comes after, all of SpaceX's success, the reusable boosters, the crewed missions, the Starship development, all of it traces back to this moment. To September 28, 2008. To the fourth attempt. To the moment the Falcon 1 reached orbit and changed spaceflight forever. Fact number 8. SpaceX is not publicly traded. Here's something that surprises many people. SpaceX, despite being one of the most valuable private companies in the world, despite generating billions of dollars in revenue, despite launching more rockets than any other organization, is not a company you can invest in through the stock market. You cannot wake up tomorrow, open your trading app, and buy shares of SpaceX. It's private. It's closed. And Musk intends to keep it that way, at least for now. This is increasingly unusual in today's world. Most companies of SpaceX's size and success have long since gone public. They've held initial public offerings. They've listed on the stock exchange. They've given everyday investors the opportunity to own a piece of the company. There's enormous pressure to do this. Going public provides massive amounts of capital. It makes early employees and investors wealthy. It's the traditional path. But Musk has resisted. He said publicly that he doesn't want to take SpaceX public until after they've successfully established a base on Mars. Think about that. Not until Mars. That could be decades away. Maybe longer. He's willing to forego all the benefits of public markets because he wants to protect SpaceX's long-term mission. Why does this matter? Because public companies answer to shareholders. And shareholders, generally speaking, care about quarterly earnings. They care about short-term profits. They want dividends. They want growth that they can see reflected in the stock price next month, next quarter, next year. Long-term thinking is difficult in public markets. Revolutionary thinking is even harder. Mars missions don't generate quarterly profits. Developing Starship requires billions of dollars in investment with no clear timeline for return. A public company would face enormous pressure to abandon these moonshots, these literally impossible-sounding goals, in favor of safer, more predictable revenue. Investors would demand it. The board would likely insist on it. By staying private, SpaceX maintains control of its destiny. Musk and the company's leadership can make decisions based on what they believe is right for the mission, not what will please Wall Street. They can pour money into Starship development, even when it explodes spectacularly on the test stand. They can pursue Mars colonization, even though it won't generate revenue for decades. They can think in terms of centuries rather than quarters. There's a downside, of course. Staying private limits capital. It means the company has to be more careful with funding. It means employees have less liquidity for their stock options. But it also means freedom. Freedom to pursue the audacious. Freedom to fail and try again. Freedom to build something that may not make financial sense in the short term, but could change the course of human civilization in the long term. Sometimes the most valuable thing a company can have is not being beholden to the market's short-term thinking. Fact number 9. Martian law. Now here's something truly bizarre. Something that sounds like it should be a joke, but isn't. If you go read the terms of service for Starlink, SpaceX's satellite internet service, buried in the legal text, you'll find a clause about Mars. Yes, Mars. The planet. The clause essentially states that for services provided on Mars, SpaceX and its customers recognize Mars as a free planet. That no Earth-based government has authority or sovereignty over Mars. That disputes will be settled through self-governing principles established in good faith at the time of Martian settlement. Let that sink in for a moment. A company that provides internet service on Earth has written legal terms for services they might provide on Mars. A planet where no human has ever set foot. A planet that's, at minimum, years away from having any permanent human presence. And they've taken the position that Mars will be legally independent from Earth. This is either incredibly premature or incredibly forward-thinking, depending on your perspective. On one hand, it seems almost absurd. Why write legal terms for a service you can't possibly provide yet? Why make grand declarations about Martian sovereignty when there's no Mars colony to be sovereign? On the other hand, this is exactly the kind of long-term thinking that defines SpaceX. They're not just building rockets for next year or next decade. They're building infrastructure for an interplanetary civilization. And part of building that civilization is thinking through the legal frameworks now, before conflicts arise. Before Earth governments start claiming portions of Mars. Before we repeat the colonial mistakes of our past. There's precedent to worry about here. Think about Antarctica. Think about the oceans. Think about the moon, even. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 says that no nation can claim sovereignty over celestial bodies. But that treaty was written when spaceflight was exclusively governmental, when the idea of private citizens living on Mars was pure science fiction. Does it apply to private settlements? Can a company claim land? Can settlers form their own government? These are questions that will need answers eventually. And SpaceX is planting a flag, so to speak, on their position. They're saying that Mars should belong to the people who live there, not to the governments of Earth. Whether this holds up in any actual legal framework remains to be seen. Whether it even matters depends on whether SpaceX succeeds in their goals. But there's something wonderful about a company being confident enough in their vision that they're writing legal terms for services on another planet. It's audacious. It's presumptuous. It's exactly the kind of thinking that might actually get humans to Mars. Because if you don't believe you'll succeed enough to write the terms of service, why bother building the rockets at all? Fact number 10, the ISS volume. Let's talk about Starship for a moment. Not the concept, not the mission, but the physical spacecraft itself. This towering structure of stainless steel that SpaceX is developing. When fully built, when its interior is fitted out, Starship will have a pressurized volume of over 1,000 cubic meters. That's a lot of space, but it's hard to really conceptualize what that means. 1,000 cubic meters. Okay, so what? Here's a comparison that makes it real. The International Space Station, that orbital laboratory that has been continuously occupied since the year 2000, that massive structure you can see from Earth with the naked eye as it passes overhead, represents the combined efforts of 5 space agencies, 15 countries, and over $100 billion in investment. It's the size of a football field when you count the solar arrays. It's the most expensive single object ever constructed. And its total pressurized volume, the actual livable space inside where astronauts can work and sleep and live, is about 932 cubic meters. One Starship, a single spacecraft, will have roughly 2/3 the interior volume of the entire International Space Station. Let me say that again, because it bears repeating. One vehicle, one rocket, will have about as much livable space inside as the combined modules of the ISS. A space station that took decades to assemble in orbit, launched piece by piece on dozens of missions, matched in volume by a single launch. This is hard to wrap your mind around. The ISS has multiple modules. It has the Russian segment with Zvezda and Zarya. It has the American segment with Harmony and Destiny and Tranquility. It has the European Columbus Lab, the Japanese Kibo module. All these pieces, all this volume, nearly matched by one Starship. What does this mean practically? It means Starship isn't just a rocket. It's a building. It's a flying apartment complex. You could fit dozens of people inside with room to move around. You could have separate areas for sleeping, working, exercising, storage. You wouldn't have the cramped quarters that astronauts on the ISS deal with. You'd have actual space. For Mars missions, this is crucial. The journey to Mars takes months. 6 months, maybe more, depending on the trajectory. Imagine spending 6 months in a small capsule. Now imagine spending it in something with the interior volume of a large house. The difference in livability, in maintaining crew mental health, in carrying enough supplies and equipment, it's night and day. This volume is one of the things that makes Starship revolutionary. It's not just about payload capacity or reusability, though those matter too. It's about creating a vehicle that can support human life for extended periods in deep space. A vehicle that's less like the cramped capsules of the Apollo era and more like an actual ship. A vessel you could live in. A vessel that could carry not just astronauts, but settlers. Not just cargo, but homes. That's the vision. That's what this volume enables. The transformation of space travel from brief excursions to genuine voyages. Fact number 11. Starship's material. Stainless steel. It sounds so ordinary, doesn't it? Stainless steel. The stuff of kitchen sinks and refrigerators. The material you wipe down after cooking dinner. And yet, SpaceX's Starship, this cutting-edge spacecraft designed to carry humans to Mars, is made primarily from stainless steel. It's one of the most unusual material choices in the history of rocket design. For decades, rockets have been built from aluminum alloys and composite materials. Lightweight, exotic materials with names like aluminum lithium and carbon fiber composites. The entire aerospace industry has been obsessed with weight reduction. Every kilogram matters when you're trying to escape Earth's gravity. So you use the lightest materials possible, even if they're expensive, even if they're difficult to work with. Musk looked at this conventional wisdom and went in the opposite direction. Stainless steel is heavy. It's about 2.5 times denser than aluminum. By traditional rocket logic, this is madness. You'd need more fuel to lift all that extra weight. Your payload capacity would suffer. It makes no sense. But Musk did the math differently. He looked at the full mission profile, not just the ascent. Starship needs to survive re-entry from orbital velocity. It needs to handle the extreme heat of atmospheric friction. Traditional heat shields are heavy and expensive. They add mass. They require maintenance. They're often single-use. Stainless steel, particularly the specific alloy SpaceX uses, has remarkable properties at extreme temperatures. At cryogenic temperatures, like when it's filled with super-cold rocket fuel, stainless steel actually gets stronger. At the high temperatures of re-entry, it maintains its strength better than aluminum, which weakens significantly when heated. You can design a stainless steel vehicle that doesn't need extensive heat shielding. The structure itself can handle the heat. Plus, stainless steel is cheap. Incredibly cheap compared to aerospace composites. It's readily available. It's easy to work with. You can weld it quickly. You can build rapidly. SpaceX can iterate on Starship designs much faster because they're working with a forgiving material that doesn't require clean rooms and complex fabrication processes. There's also something philosophically interesting here. Musk often talks about reasoning from first principles. Don't accept conventional wisdom just because that's how it's always been done. Ask why. Understand the fundamental physics and economics. When you do that with Starship, when you consider the whole system, reusability, manufacturing speed, structural requirements across different temperature regimes, stainless steel starts to make sense. It's heavy, yes, but Starship is enormous. It's powered by dozens of engines. It can afford to be heavy. And in exchange for that weight, you get durability, you get manufacturability, you get economics that make rapid reusability possible. You get a vehicle that looks more like a water tower than a sleek rocket. Shiny, metallic, utilitarian. But that's fine. Beauty in engineering isn't always about aesthetics. Sometimes it's about finding the solution everyone else overlooked because they were following rules that didn't need to exist. Fact number 12. The best design rule. Elon Musk has a saying that drives SpaceX's engineering culture. He says that the best part is no part. The best design is no design. At first, this sounds like nonsense, maybe even lazy. But there's profound wisdom in it, and it's shaped how SpaceX builds everything. The instinct of most engineers, when faced with a problem, is to add something. The system isn't working quite right. Add a sensor. Add a backup. Add a redundancy. Add a control mechanism. Engineering education teaches us to solve problems by building solutions. More complexity. More parts. More systems. Musk pushes his teams in the opposite direction. Before you add anything, he asks, can you delete something? Do you really need that part? Can the system work without it? Can another part do double duty? Can you simplify the design so that component isn't necessary in the first place? This is harder than it sounds. It requires deep understanding of the system. It requires courage, because removing things feels risky. What if you need it? What if something goes wrong? Adding things feels safe. Redundancy feels prudent. But every part you add has weight. It has cost. It has complexity. It's one more thing that can fail. It's one more thing to manufacture, inspect, install, maintain. There's a famous story about the Falcon 9 landing legs. Early designs were complex, with hydraulics and motors and control systems. Musk kept asking, can we make this simpler? Can we delete parts? The team eventually developed legs that are essentially just struts. They fold up for launch using the force of the air rushing past during ascent. They swing down for landing using gravity and springs. No motors. No hydraulics. Just elegant simplicity. Or consider the heat shield tiles on Starship. Early concepts had thousands of different tile shapes, each custom designed for its specific location. Complex. Expensive. Hard to manufacture. Musk pushed for standardization. Can we use fewer tile types? Can we use the same shape in more places? The current design uses far fewer unique tiles, which means faster production, easier replacement, simpler logistics. This philosophy extends beyond hardware. SpaceX questions every requirement, every specification, every regulation. Do we actually need this, or is it just tradition? Is there a simpler way? Can we challenge the assumptions? There's risk in this approach, certainly. Sometimes you delete something and realize too late that you needed it. Sometimes simplification goes too far. But more often, Musk's philosophy reveals that we've been carrying unnecessary weight, literally and figuratively, for decades. That we've been adding complexity not because we needed to, but because we didn't have the courage to question whether we could do without. The best part is no part. The best process is no process. The best design is the one that achieves the goal with the absolute minimum necessary. It's a philosophy that makes Starship possible, that makes rapid iteration possible, that makes affordable spaceflight possible. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing. To delete. To simplify. To trust that less can be more. Fact number 13. 100-person flight goal. Close your eyes and imagine a spaceship. Not a capsule. Not a cramped vessel with 3 or 4 astronauts squeezed inside. Imagine a real ship. A vessel with room for 100 people. 100 human beings, all traveling together through the vacuum of space toward another planet. It sounds like science fiction. It sounds like something from a movie about generation ships and interstellar travel. But that's the design goal for Starship. 100 passengers. Not in some distant future version. Not in some upgraded model decades from now, but in the basic architecture of the vehicle being developed today. Starship is being designed from the ground up to carry 100 people to Mars. Think about what that means. 100 people is a community. It's not a crew, it's a village. You'd have doctors and engineers, farmers and teachers, electricians and cooks. You'd have people who know how to fix things, people who know how to grow things, people who know how to build things. You'd have the beginnings of a self-sufficient settlement. This is radically different from historical space missions. Apollo carried 3 astronauts. The Space Shuttle carried up to 8. The Crew Dragon carries 4. Even the largest concepts for Mars missions before Starship imagined crews of maybe 6 to 12 people. Small, specialized groups of elite astronauts. Everyone a PhD. Everyone trained for years. Everyone exceptional. Starship changes that equation. With 100 people, you can't have everyone be an elite astronaut. You need regular people. People with specialized skills that have nothing to do with spaceflight. People who maybe aren't in perfect health. Older people. Younger people. Families, potentially. Regular humans going to live somewhere new. The interior design challenges are fascinating. How do you arrange space for 100 people? You'd need sleeping quarters, obviously, but also common areas. Galleys for cooking. Bathrooms, multiple bathrooms. Medical facilities. Exercise equipment, because you can't let people's muscles atrophy during 6 months of travel. Storage for supplies. Water recycling systems. Air processing. Entertainment, because you need to keep 100 people sane for half a year in a confined space. SpaceX hasn't revealed detailed interior layouts yet, but the volume is there. That 1,000 cubic meters we talked about earlier, that's enough space. Not luxurious space, certainly. Not cruise ship space, but workable space. You could have multi-level configurations. Sleeping pods, perhaps like some modern hostels or Japanese capsule hotels. Shared facilities. It would require careful planning, but it's possible. And this is key to Musk's Mars vision. You can't build a Mars colony with 6 people at a time. You need volume. You need numbers. You need to bring enough people to establish real infrastructure, to have the skill sets necessary for survival, to have enough genetic diversity if we're serious about long-term settlement. 100 people per flight starts to make that possible. Multiple flights, hundreds of people, thousands eventually. That's how you build a civilization. That's how you make humanity multiplanetary. One starship at a time, carrying villages to a new world. Fact number 14. On-orbit refueling. Here's a problem that doesn't sound like a problem until you think about it. Starship is huge. It's powerful. It can lift over 100 tons to low Earth orbit. But that's not enough to go to Mars. Not even close. Not with a useful payload. Not with people. The problem is physics. The tyranny of the rocket equation. To escape Earth's gravity, you need enormous amounts of fuel. Starship uses almost all of its propellant just getting to orbit. It arrives in low Earth orbit essentially empty. Its tanks are nearly dry. And to go from Earth orbit to Mars, you need to accelerate to very high speeds. You need to break free from Earth's gravitational influence. That requires more fuel. Much more fuel. More than Starship has left. So how do you solve this? The traditional answer would be to build a bigger rocket. Make the fuel tanks larger. Add more engines. But there are limits. At some point, you're carrying so much fuel to lift your fuel that you're barely gaining any advantage. You hit diminishing returns. You can't just make the rocket bigger and bigger. SpaceX's solution is orbital refueling. The idea is simple, though the execution is anything but. You launch a Starship to orbit. It arrives nearly empty. Then you launch another Starship, this one carrying nothing but propellant. The 2 spacecraft meet in orbit. They dock. They transfer fuel from the tanker to the Mars-bound ship. The tanker returns to Earth or burns up. The Mars ship now has full tanks. Actually, you'd need multiple tanker flights. Maybe 10 or 15 launches to fully refuel a single Mars-bound Starship, depending on the exact mission profile. But that's okay. Starships are designed to be rapidly reusable. You can launch the booster, land it, refuel it, and launch again within hours potentially. So you could refuel a Mars ship relatively quickly with the same booster, flying multiple times. This has never been done before at this scale. Sure, spacecraft have been refueled in orbit. The ISS receives propellant transfers regularly, but those involve small amounts of fuel. Hypergolic propellants that are liquid at normal temperatures. Starship uses liquid methane and liquid oxygen. Cryogenic propellants that have to be kept incredibly cold. Trying to transfer hundreds of tons of cryogenic propellant between 2 spacecraft in orbit, in microgravity, without it boiling off or creating dangerous pressure situations, that's new. That's hard. SpaceX plans to test this in the next few years. They'll launch 2 Starships, meet them in orbit, attempt a propellant transfer. It's one of the critical technologies that has to work for Mars missions to be possible. Without orbital refueling, Starship is just a very large orbital transport. With orbital refueling, it becomes an interplanetary vessel. There's something elegant about this approach. Instead of building one impossibly large rocket, You build a moderately large reusable rocket and use it multiple times. You turn spaceflight into a logistics problem rather than a single-shot engineering challenge. It's like building a bridge by ferrying materials across in trucks, rather than trying to build one truck large enough to carry the entire bridge at once. Sometimes the solution isn't making things bigger. It's making them reusable and accepting that you'll need multiple trips. Fact number 15. The Mars Propellant Plan. Now let's talk about an even bigger challenge. Let's say Starship gets to Mars successfully. Let's say it lands safely with its crew and cargo. Wonderful. But now there's a problem. The ship is sitting on the surface of Mars with empty fuel tanks. It used all its propellant landing, and the crew wants to come home eventually. How do you refuel on Mars? You can't ship fuel from Earth. That defeats the entire purpose. The whole point is to make Mars missions sustainable, not dependent on constant resupply from Earth. So you have to make fuel on Mars. You have to use local resources. This concept is called in situ resource utilization, or ISRU. And for Mars, SpaceX has a specific plan based on chemistry that's been understood for over a century. It's called the Sabatier process, named after the French chemist Paul Sabatier, who discovered it in 1897. The basic reaction combines carbon dioxide and hydrogen to produce methane and water. Carbon dioxide plus 4 hydrogen molecules yields methane plus 2 water molecules. Simple chemistry. Elementary stuff, really. The genius is that Mars provides one of these ingredients for free. The Martian atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide. You can literally just pull air from the atmosphere, and you have your carbon dioxide. The challenge is the hydrogen. Where do you get hydrogen on Mars? The answer is water. Mars has water ice, lots of it, particularly at the polar regions, but also in many other locations. You mine this ice. You melt it. You run electricity through it in a process called electrolysis, which splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. Now you have hydrogen. You feed this hydrogen and atmospheric carbon dioxide into your Sabatier reactor. Out comes methane, which is Starship's fuel, and water, which you can electrolyze again to get more hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen, conveniently, is also useful because you need liquid oxygen as the oxidizer for the methane in your rocket engine. So the full process is extract water ice, electrolyze it into hydrogen and oxygen, capture atmospheric carbon dioxide, combine the hydrogen and carbon dioxide to make methane and water, keep the methane as fuel, keep the oxygen as oxidizer, electrolyze the water byproduct to get more hydrogen, repeat. It's a cycle. It's self-sustaining once you have the initial equipment and power source. The power requirements are substantial. You'd need either a nuclear reactor or a very large solar array. SpaceX has talked about both options. But the chemistry works. We know it works. It's been demonstrated in labs. The challenge is scaling it up, making it robust enough to operate in the harsh Martian environment, and doing it efficiently enough that you can refuel a Starship in a reasonable time frame. But if this works, if SpaceX can demonstrate fuel production on Mars, it changes everything. It means Starships don't have to be one-way vessels. It means Mars doesn't have to be a death sentence or a permanent exile. It means you can go to Mars, stay for a while, and come home. It means Mars missions become round trips. It means the beginning of true Mars infrastructure, all based on chemistry discovered in a French laboratory more than a century ago. Sometimes the technologies that enable the future aren't new inventions. They're old knowledge applied in new contexts. The Sabatier process, waiting patiently for over 100 years for humanity to reach Mars and finally put it to use. Fact number 16. Landing the booster mid-air. Imagine a building. A 20-story building made of metal and engines. Now imagine throwing that building into the sky at thousands of miles per hour. Now imagine that building flying itself back down, slowing itself with its engines, and rather than landing on legs on the ground, having it be caught mid-air by giant mechanical arms. Caught, like you might catch a baseball, except the baseball weighs several million pounds and is on fire. This is what SpaceX is doing with the Super Heavy booster. It's possibly the most audacious thing they've attempted, And that's saying something for a company that routinely lands rockets on drone ships in the ocean. The Super Heavy booster is the first stage of the Starship system. It's enormous. It stands about 70 meters tall. It's powered by 33 Raptor engines. When it launches, it generates over 16 million pounds of thrust. It's the most powerful rocket booster ever built. And SpaceX wants to catch it with the launch tower. The launch tower, which they call Mechazilla, has two large arms that extend out. They're nicknamed the chopsticks because of how they look. During launch, the booster sits between these arms. It lifts off, flies its mission, separates from the upper stage, and then comes back. And rather than landing on legs somewhere, it positions itself to fly back between those arms. The arms close around it. They grip it. They hold it. The booster is caught. Why do this? Why not just land on legs like the Falcon 9 does? Several reasons. First, legs are heavy. They're structure that the rocket has to carry all the way up and all the way back down. They're mass that could be payload instead. Second, legs are complex. They have hydraulics, mechanisms, points of failure. They need maintenance. Third, if you catch the booster with the tower, you can immediately place it back on the launch mount. You don't need to transport it. You don't need ground equipment to lift it. You catch it, you check it, you refuel it, you launch again. Potentially within an hour. The first successful catch happened in late 2024. The booster came back, positioned itself with incredible precision, and the arms closed around it. The SpaceX control room erupted. It was one of those moments where you're watching something that shouldn't be possible. Your brain tells you that you can't catch a rocket. Rockets don't work that way. But there it was, happening real successful. There have been some failures too, of course. Tests where the booster missed the catch, where systems didn't work quite right, where the margins were too close. That's part of testing. That's part of iteration. But the fact that it's worked even once proves the concept. Proves that you can design a rocket that flies itself back to the exact position it launched from and have a tower catch it. Think about the precision required. The booster is moving. The tower is fixed, but Earth is rotating. Wind is blowing. The booster is heavy and has momentum. And yet, SpaceX can control it to within centimeters. They can guide it back, slow it down, position it perfectly, all using engine thrust and grid fins and onboard computers, making thousands of calculations per second. This is the kind of thing that defines SpaceX. Not just doing hard things, but doing things that seem impossible. Things that make other aerospace engineers shake their heads in disbelief. Catching rockets out of the sky, making it look almost routine, making the science fiction real. Fact number 17, the Tesla Easter egg. February 6th, 2018. SpaceX is about to launch the Falcon Heavy for the first time. The Falcon Heavy is a monster. 3 Falcon 9 boosters strapped together. 27 engines firing at once. The most powerful operational rocket in the world at that time. It's a test flight, which means there's a real chance it might explode. Test flights often do. For test flights, you need a payload. Something to simulate the weight of a real satellite. Traditionally, companies use mass simulators. Blocks of concrete or steel. Dead weight. Boring but practical. Musk decided to do something different. He decided to launch his personal Tesla Roadster, a cherry red sports car, into space. People thought he was joking at first. Surely that's not serious. Surely the first Falcon Heavy will carry a proper test mass. But no, Musk was completely serious. He put his Tesla Roadster on the Falcon Heavy. He placed a mannequin in a SpaceX spacesuit in the driver's seat. He named the mannequin Starman after the David Bowie song. He put "Don't Panic" on the dashboard screen, a reference to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He even put a Hot Wheels Tesla on the dashboard with a tiny astronaut inside. The launch was spectacular. All 3 boosters lit up. The Falcon Heavy lifted off. It was glorious. The sound, the power, the flame. And then, the boosters came back. 2 of them landed simultaneously at Cape Canaveral. Perfect synchronized landings. The crowd went wild. The center core missed the drone ship, but 2 out of 3 was still incredible. And the Roadster? It continued on. It was supposed to go into orbit around Mars, roughly. Instead, because the upper stage performed better than expected, it went a bit further. It's now in an elliptical orbit around the Sun, a heliocentric orbit that crosses Earth's orbit and extends out past Mars. Starman is still in the driver's seat, frozen, radiation blasted, cruising through the solar system at thousands of miles per hour. There's something wonderfully absurd about this. Somewhere out there, right now, there's a car floating in space. A car that will orbit the Sun for millions of years. Alien civilizations, if they exist, might one day find it and wonder what kind of species builds personal transportation and then throws it into the void. Future archaeologists will puzzle over its significance. But there's also something profound. Musk could have launched concrete. He could have been practical and boring and responsible. Instead, he launched art. He launched joy. He launched a statement that space doesn't have to be sterile and corporate and serious all the time. That we can be playful even while doing incredibly difficult technical things. That we can make people smile even while pushing the boundaries of what's possible. The images from that launch are iconic now. Starman sitting peacefully in the roadster with Earth in the background. The car tumbling slowly through space, space oddity, playing on loop though no one can hear it. It's beautiful. It's ridiculous. It's perfect. It's very SpaceX. Taking something that should be purely technical and engineering and infusing it with personality and wonder. Making space exciting again. Making people care. One cherry-red Tesla at a time. Fact number 18. The cost difference. Let's talk about money for a moment. Specifically, let's talk about how much it costs to launch things into space, because this is where SpaceX has fundamentally changed the game. A Falcon 9 launch, as of recent pricing, costs about $62 million. That's what SpaceX charges customers. $62 million to put your satellite into orbit. Now, that might sound expensive. And it is, certainly, compared to most things you might purchase. But in the context of spaceflight, it's revolutionary. Before SpaceX, before reusable rockets, launch costs were much higher. A Delta IV Heavy launch could cost over $400 million. A United Launch Alliance Atlas V might cost over $100 million. Even smaller rockets routinely cost over $100 million per launch. SpaceX cut that cost by more than half. They did it through reusability, by landing and reusing the first stage booster, which is the most expensive part of the rocket. They avoid having to build a new one for every launch. They still refurbish the booster between flights. They inspect it, replace worn parts, test systems. But the fundamental structure, the engines, the tanks, those fly again. And again. And again. But $62 million is just the beginning. That's for Falcon 9, which is now a mature, operational system. Starship, when it becomes operational, could push costs even lower. Musk has claimed that a fully reusable Starship could one day launch for as little as $2 million per flight. $2 million. That's less than 3% of current Falcon 9 costs. Less than 1% of legacy launch costs. How is that possible? It comes down to reusability and scale. Starship is designed to be fully reusable. Not just the booster, but the upper stage too. Both parts come back. Both parts fly again. And Starship is huge. It can carry over 100 tons to orbit. The cost per kilogram of payload becomes incredibly small. If SpaceX achieves anything close to $2 million per launch, it breaks everything. It breaks every assumption about space economics. Suddenly, space isn't just for governments and large corporations. It's accessible to universities, to small companies, to research projects that couldn't dream of affording traditional launch costs. You could launch not because you have to, but because you want to. You could try experimental satellites knowing that failure isn't catastrophic, because another launch is affordable. It enables entirely new architectures. Why build one massive, expensive, ultra-reliable satellite when you could build 10 smaller, cheaper ones and have redundancy? Why design for a 10-year lifespan when you could plan to replace the satellite after 3 years with updated technology? Why ration your experiments when launch cost isn't the limiting factor anymore? And for Mars, For Musk's ultimate goal, cheap launches are everything. You need to launch hundreds of starships. You need to launch propellant, cargo, equipment people. At 400 million per launch, that's impossible. At 62 million, it's difficult but conceivable. At 2 million, suddenly the economics of Mars colonization start to work. Suddenly, you can imagine launching enough infrastructure to support a real settlement. We're not at 2 million yet. Starship is still in development. But even the progress from 400 million to 62 million shows what's possible when you challenge fundamental assumptions about how rockets should work. When you refuse to accept that space has to be expensive. When you believe that access to orbit can be closer to the cost of a long-haul airplane flight than the cost of a military weapons system. Fact number 19. The record reuse. Let's end this section with a specific booster. Its designation is B1062. To most people, it's just a number. But to SpaceX, and to the history of spaceflight, B1062 is extraordinary. Because this single Falcon 9 first-stage booster has flown 20 times. 20 flights. 20 launches to space. 20 returns to Earth. 20 landings. And it's still flying. Think about what that means. For the entire history of spaceflight before SpaceX, rockets were single-use. You built a rocket, you launched it once, and it was gone. Burned up, crashed into the ocean debris. Every launch required a brand new rocket. The most expensive piece of equipment, used once and thrown away. The Space Shuttle tried to change that. Its orbiter was reusable, but it required such extensive refurbishment between flights that it ended up being more expensive than single-use rockets. The external tank was thrown away every time. The solid rocket boosters were recovered and refurbished at great cost. It wasn't true reusability. SpaceX achieved true reusability. They land the booster. They inspect it. They do some refurbishment, certainly. Replace some heat shielding, check the engines, test systems. But it's more like maintaining an airplane than building a new rocket. And then they launch it again. And again. B1062 first flew in November 2020. It launched a GPS satellite for the US Space Force. It landed successfully. Then it flew again 2 months later. And again. And again. Each time, it came back. Each time, it proved that reusability works. By the time it reached 20 flights, it had launched everything from Starlink satellites to commercial communications satellites to crew missions. It had become a workhorse. A reliable, proven piece of hardware. 20 flights was previously unimaginable. Even SpaceX's own engineers weren't sure how many times a booster could fly. They designed for 10 flights initially. Then B1062 passed 10. Then 15. Then 20. Each flight is a data point. Each flight teaches them something about fatigue, about wear patterns, about which parts need replacement, and which can keep going. And B1062 isn't alone. Other boosters have flown 15 times, 18 times. The fleet is accumulating hundreds of flights. SpaceX is learning what works, what doesn't, how to make boosters last longer, how to reduce refurbishment time, how to make reusability not just possible but routine. There's something beautiful about B1062's journey. This object, this machine, has been to space and back 20 times. It's crossed the Kármán line 40 times, up and down. It's survived temperatures from cryogenic to re-entry heating. It's fired its engines hundreds of times. It's experienced forces that would tear apart most structures. And it keeps working. It represents a fundamental shift in how we think about rockets. They're no longer disposable. They're vehicles. They're tools. They're equipment you maintain and operate, not equipment you use once and discard. B1062 is proof. Proof that Musk's vision of reusable rockets wasn't fantasy. Proof that we can make access to space more like aviation and less like building a cathedral for every flight. Proof that the future of spaceflight looks very different from its past. One booster, flying again and again, carrying our ambitions to orbit. Fact number 20. Catching the fairing. The booster is the most expensive part of a rocket, certainly. That's what SpaceX focused on first. Land it, reuse it, save money. But the booster isn't the only part that falls back to Earth. There's also the fairing, the nose cone, that clamshell-shaped structure that protects the payload during launch, then splits apart and falls away once the rocket is in space. Fairings are large. The Falcon 9 fairing is about 40 feet tall, and they're expensive. Each fairing costs around $6 million. They're made from carbon fiber composite. They're precision manufactured to be aerodynamic, lightweight, and protective. $6 million per launch, falling into the ocean, sinking to the bottom, destroyed. It bothered Musk. It bothered the engineers. That's a lot of money to just throw away. So SpaceX developed a catching system. Not for the fairing on the way down. That would be too difficult. But after it falls. The fairing halves have small thrusters and a guidance system. As they fall, they steer themselves. They aim for a specific location in the ocean. And waiting at that location is a ship. A specialized ship with a massive net stretched across its deck. The ships were named Ms. Tree and Ms. Chief. Later, after upgrades, they became Go Ms. Tree and Go Ms. Chief. The idea was that the fairing would fall from space, descend under parachute, steer itself, and land in the net. Catch it mid-air essentially, or just before it hits the water. It sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous. The timing has to be perfect. The weather has to cooperate. The fairing has to steer accurately after surviving re-entry. The ship has to position itself correctly in potentially rough seas. Everything has to work just right. And sometimes it did. There were spectacular successful catches. Video of a fairing half drifting down under parachute and settling perfectly into the net on the ship. The SpaceX community celebrated each one. But there were also many misses. Fairings landing in the water, just feet from the ship. Close, but not close enough. Salt water ruins the electronics and compromises the composite structure. Eventually, SpaceX refined the approach. Now they fish the fairings out of the water quickly after splashdown, before too much damage occurs. It's not quite as elegant as catching them, but it's more reliable. And it works. They can refurbish water-landed fairings and fly them again. Another component reused. Another cost saved. Another step toward making spaceflight more like aviation. The fairing catching program represents SpaceX's philosophy in microcosm. See something expensive being thrown away. Refuse to accept that it has to be that way. Develop an ambitious, somewhat crazy solution. Test it. Iterate on it. Eventually make it work, even if not exactly as originally imagined. Save money. Launch more. Push forward. $6 million per launch, now recovered and reused. Small steps, but they add up. They compound. They make the impossible gradually, incrementally, actually possible. Fact number 21. The grid fin's secret. Look at a Falcon 9 booster as it returns from space. Near the top, just below where it's separated from the second stage, you'll see 4 black structures. They look almost like waffle irons. Square grids of metal that fold out during descent. These are grid fins, and they're crucial to how SpaceX lands their rockets. When the booster is falling back through the atmosphere, it's moving fast. Very fast. It's basically a controlled falling building. Without guidance, without control, it would tumble. It would be impossible to land. The engines can provide thrust, certainly, and they do during the final landing burn. But thrust alone isn't enough. You need to steer. You need to control your orientation. You need to point the right way. That's what the grid fins do. They're aerodynamic control surfaces. As the booster falls through the atmosphere, air rushes past. The grid fins extend into that airstream. By tilting them, by changing their angle, they create forces. Push the booster left. Push it right. Adjust the angle of attack. They're like little wings, but instead of providing lift, they provide control. The fins are made of titanium. They have to be. During re-entry, they experience tremendous heating. The friction of the atmosphere rushing past at hypersonic speeds creates temperatures that would melt most materials. Titanium can handle it. The fins glow during descent, visibly hot, but they survive. Each fin can move independently. They're controlled by hydraulic actuators, driven by the flight computer. The computer is constantly calculating. It knows where the booster is, where it needs to go, how it's oriented, what the wind conditions are. It adjusts the fins thousands of times per second. Tiny corrections, constant adjustments, steering the booster through its descent profile. Without grid fins, SpaceX couldn't land boosters with the precision they achieve. They might be able to get close. They might be able to land in a general area. But landing on a drone ship? Landing on a specific pad? That requires accuracy measured in meters. That requires the kind of fine control that only something like grid fins can provide. There's elegance in this solution. Grid fins aren't new technology. They've been used on missiles and bombs for decades. The Soviet Union used them on ICBMs. But SpaceX adapted them, enlarged them, made them work for rocket boosters falling from space. They took existing technology and applied it in a new context. They made it work for peaceful purposes instead of military ones. They made it work to save rockets instead of guide weapons. And they work beautifully. Watch a Falcon 9 landing. Watch how stable it is. How controlled. How it comes down, slows, hovers almost, then touches down softly. The grid fins are a huge part of why that's possible. 4 titanium waffle irons, making the impossible look routine. Fact number 22. The fastest turnaround. Reusability is meaningless if it takes forever to prepare a rocket for its next flight. If you land a booster and then need 6 months to refurbish it, you haven't really achieved airline-like operations. You've just made a slightly more efficient disposable rocket. The real goal is rapid reusability. Launch, land, launch again. Quickly. SpaceX has been pushing this boundary relentlessly. In the early days of booster reuse, turnaround times were measured in months. Land a booster, transport it back to the factory, take it apart, inspect everything, replace parts, test, integrate, transport to the launch pad. Months of work. But with each flight they learned. They figured out what needed inspection and what didn't. They improved their processes. They got faster. The current record for the fastest turnaround of a single Falcon 9 booster is under 3 weeks. Less than 21 days from landing after one mission to launching on the next. Think about that. The same physical booster, the same engines, the same structure, flying to space twice in under 3 weeks. This is approaching aviation cadence. Not quite there yet. Commercial airplanes turn around in hours, not weeks. But remember, we're talking about a vehicle that goes to space, that experiences the violence of launch, the extremes of temperature, the forces of re-entry, the precision of landing. And it can do it again in 3 weeks. That's extraordinary. The process is well rehearsed now. The booster lands, usually on a drone ship in the ocean. The ship returns to port. The booster is removed, transported to the hangar. Engineers inspect it visually, check key systems, test the engines. They replace any damaged heat shielding. They top off fluids. They run tests. If everything looks good, they transport it back to the pad, mate it with the second stage and payload, and it's ready to fly. Not every booster turns around this quickly. Some missions require more extensive refurbishment. Some boosters need more work between flights. But the fact that it's possible, that it's been done, proves the concept. Proves that rockets can operate more like airplanes than like one-time use hardware. And SpaceX keeps pushing. They want to get turnaround time down to days. Eventually hours. The super heavy booster for Starship, the one they're catching with the tower, could potentially be inspected, refueled, and launched again within an hour or 2 if everything is designed correctly. That's the dream. That's the goal. Launch rates that would have been considered insane just a decade ago. 3 weeks is just the beginning. It's proof. It's validation. It's the demonstration that rapid reusability isn't fantasy. And with each successful quick turnaround, SpaceX gets closer to the day when launching to space is barely more remarkable than a plane taking off from an airport. Routine. Expected. The way things work. Fact number 23. The light pollution issue. Now we need to talk about something controversial. Something where SpaceX's ambitions have created real problems for others. The Starlink constellation, as revolutionary as it is for internet connectivity, has become a significant issue for astronomers. And it's worth understanding why. Starlink satellites are bright. Not intentionally. They're not trying to be visible, but they're large objects in low Earth orbit. They're covered in reflective materials. And when the sun is below the horizon from your perspective on the ground, but the satellites are high enough to still be in sunlight, they shine. They reflect that sunlight back down to Earth. And if you're looking at the night sky through a telescope, especially a large research telescope with a wide field of view, you see them. Lots of them. Astronomers take long exposure images. They're trying to capture faint, distant objects. Galaxies billions of light years away. Dim stars. Subtle phenomena. Their cameras are collecting photons over minutes or hours. And during that time, Starlink satellites drift through the field of view. They leave bright streaks across the image. They ruin the data. The observation has to be discarded or heavily processed to remove the satellite trails. This is a real problem. Professional astronomy depends on these observations. We're learning about the universe through these telescopes. We're studying dark energy, searching for exoplanets, mapping distant galaxies. And increasingly, that work is being disrupted by satellite constellations, particularly Starlink, because of its sheer size. SpaceX has tried to address this. They've developed darker coatings for the satellites. They've experimented with visors that block sunlight from reflecting off certain surfaces. They've adjusted satellite orientations to minimize reflectivity. And these efforts have helped. Newer Starlink satellites are dimmer than the original ones. But they're still visible. And there are thousands of them. The astronomy community is frustrated. Some are angry. They argue that SpaceX is privatizing the night sky, that a company's commercial interests are taking precedence over scientific research, that future generations might not be able to study the universe the way we have because the space near Earth is too crowded, too bright, too polluted. SpaceX's response is that they're providing internet to underserved areas, that billions of people lack reliable connectivity, that the benefits of global internet access outweigh the disruption to astronomy, that they're working on mitigation strategies, that ground-based astronomy might need to adapt, perhaps by moving more observations to space-based telescopes that aren't affected by satellites. It's a difficult tension. Both sides have valid points. Connectivity is important. Astronomy is important. Perhaps there's a solution that accommodates both. Better satellite designs, better observation strategies, international regulations about satellite brightness. But right now, it's an ongoing conflict. A reminder that even beneficial technologies can have unintended consequences. That progress in one area can create problems in another. That we need to think holistically about how we use space, because it's not unlimited, and what we put up there affects everyone looking up. Fact number 24, Starlink's size. Let's put the size of the Starlink constellation into perspective. As of mid-2025, there are approximately 7,000 active satellites in low Earth orbit. Of those 7,000, over 4,500 are Starlink satellites. That means SpaceX operates roughly 65% of all active satellites currently orbiting Earth. 65%. Nearly two-thirds. One company. One constellation. This is unprecedented in the history of spaceflight. Never before has a single entity operated so many satellites. Never before has one constellation dominated orbital space so completely. It happened quickly too. The first Starlink satellites launched in 2019. In just 6 years, SpaceX went from 0 satellites to controlling the majority of all active satellites. Think about what this means. SpaceX is now responsible for tracking, maintaining, and eventually deorbiting thousands of satellites. If something goes wrong, if a satellite malfunctions, if orbital debris threatens the constellation, SpaceX has to respond. They have to manage an orbital infrastructure larger than everyone else's combined. It also means SpaceX has fundamentally changed the satellite industry. Traditionally, satellites were large, expensive, built to last for 15 years or more. Companies would spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a single satellite, launch it carefully, Operate it conservatively. The economics were all about making that one satellite work for as long as possible. Starlink inverted that model. The satellites are relatively small and cheap. They're designed to last about 5 years, not 15. But SpaceX can afford to do this because launch costs are low, because they control the launch capability, because they can put up hundreds of satellites per year. If some fail early, that's okay. If technology improves, they'll launch updated versions. It's a completely different approach. More like consumer electronics than traditional aerospace. Iterate rapidly. Upgrade continuously. Accept that individual units are disposable as long as the overall system works. This shift has implications beyond Starlink. Other companies are watching. They're seeing that maybe the old model doesn't make sense anymore. Maybe you don't need satellites that last 15 years if you can launch cheaply and frequently. Maybe the future is shorter-lived, more capable satellites that get replaced regularly with newer technology. But it also raises questions. Is it good for one company to control so much of low Earth orbit? What happens if SpaceX decides to change something fundamental about how Starlink operates? What if they go bankrupt and can't maintain the constellation? What if international relations deteriorate and Starlink becomes a geopolitical tool? These aren't easy questions. And they're questions we need to grapple with because Starlink isn't going away. If anything, it's going to get larger. SpaceX has approval to launch tens of thousands more satellites. The constellation could eventually include 40,000 satellites or more. At that point, Starlink wouldn't just dominate low Earth orbit. It would define it. Fact number 25. The naming inspiration. Here's a small detail that might surprise you. The name Starlink, which has become so ubiquitous in discussions of satellite internet and space infrastructure, was reportedly inspired by a young adult novel, The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, published in 2012. A book about teenagers dealing with cancer and love and mortality, and what it means to live a meaningful life in the face of death. It's an odd inspiration for a satellite constellation. The Fault in Our Stars isn't about technology or space or the future. It's a deeply human story about connection, about finding meaning, about the relationships that sustain us. But maybe that's exactly why the name fits. Because Starlink, at its core, is about connection. About linking people who are separated by distance, by geography, by the accidents of where they were born. The word Starlink appears in the novel in the context of Augustus Waters, one of the main characters, talking about the stars and about how we're all connected despite being separated by vast distances. The metaphor is about human connection transcending physical separation, about how even when we're apart, we're still linked by our shared humanity, our shared experiences, our shared hopes. And isn't that what Starlink, the satellite network, aims to do? Connect people across vast distances. Bring internet to remote areas where physical infrastructure doesn't reach. Link rural communities to the global network. Allow people in one part of the world to communicate with people everywhere else. It's a technological implementation of a fundamentally human need for connection. Whether this origin story is entirely accurate or somewhat mythologized, it's been repeated enough that it's part of Starlink's lore. And there's something appealing about it. Something that humanizes a massive technological system. Something that reminds us that even the most advanced technology is ultimately in service of human needs and human desires. We build these networks not because satellites and internet protocols are inherently interesting, though they are. We build them because people want to connect. They want to share stories, share knowledge, share their lives with others. They want to be part of something larger. They don't want to be isolated by geography or circumstance. Starlink, whatever its technical merits and challenges, whatever its impacts on astronomy or orbital space, serves that fundamental human need. It links us. Across continents, across oceans, across distances that used to mean isolation. Under the stars, we're all connected. That's the promise. That's what the name suggests. And perhaps that's worth remembering when we discuss the constellation as a purely technical or commercial endeavor. Fact number 26. The V2 mini scale. Starlink satellites have gotten bigger. The original satellites were relatively small, about 500 pounds. Flat panels for solar arrays. Compact, designed to fit many of them on a single Falcon 9 launch. SpaceX could launch 60 satellites at a time, sometimes more. It was efficient. It allowed rapid constellation growth. But the original satellites had limitations. Limited bandwidth. Limited capability. As Starlink's user base grew, as demand increased, SpaceX needed more capable satellites. So they designed version 2. Starlink V2. These are much larger, much more capable. They have more powerful antennas, more sophisticated electronics, more bandwidth. They can handle more users, provide faster speeds, operate more efficiently. But there's a problem. V2 satellites are heavy. The full V2 design is so large that it can't launch on Falcon 9 at all. It requires Starship. And Starship isn't operational yet, at least not for routine launches. So SpaceX developed an interim version called V2 Mini. It's a scaled-down V2 that can fit on Falcon 9, but barely. V2 Mini satellites weigh about 740 kilograms. That's over 1,600 pounds. More than twice the mass of the original Starlink satellites. This matters because of launch capacity. A Falcon 9 can only carry so much mass to Starlink's operational orbit. With the original satellites, SpaceX could launch 60 at a time. With V2 Mini, they can launch maybe 20 or 21 satellites per launch. Sometimes fewer. This is the practical limit of Falcon 9 for Starlink deployment. They've pushed the rocket as far as it can go. To deploy more capable satellites faster, they need Starship. They need that larger payload capacity. They need to be able to launch 100 satellites at once, or more. That's when Starlink's growth rate really accelerates. But even constrained by Falcon 9's limits, V2 Mini represents a significant upgrade. Each satellite provides roughly 4 times the capacity of a V1 satellite. So even though they're launching fewer satellites per mission, the total bandwidth being added to the constellation is substantial. The network is getting more capable with every launch. This progression, from V1 to V2 Mini to eventually full V2 on Starship, illustrates SpaceX's iterative approach. Don't wait for perfection. Deploy what you can with what you have. Learn from real-world operation. Improve continuously. V1 satellites proved the concept and started generating revenue. V2 Mini is improving capacity within Falcon 9's constraints. Full V2 will come when Starship is ready, and it will enable the next phase of growth. It's also a reminder of how interconnected SpaceX's various projects are. Starlink needs Starship to reach its full potential. Starship development is partly funded by Starlink revenue. Falcon 9 provides cash flow and supports Starlink deployment while Starship is being developed. Everything feeds into everything else. It's an ecosystem, not isolated projects. And that integrated approach is part of why SpaceX moves so quickly. They're not just building rockets or satellites. They're building a system for space access and utilization, with each component enabling the others. Fact number 27. Starlink's military contract. Starlink isn't just for civilian use. SpaceX has developed a specialized version called Starshield, designed specifically for government and military applications. This isn't widely advertised. It's not something SpaceX promotes heavily in their consumer marketing. But it exists, and it's significant. Starshield is hardened. It has enhanced encryption. It has features that don't make sense for consumer internet, but are crucial for military operations. Things like resistance to jamming, secure command and control, the ability to operate in contested environments. It's built to government specifications, designed to meet Department of Defense requirements. The US military has become increasingly interested in space-based communications. Traditional military satellites are large, expensive, and vulnerable. They're obvious targets. Everyone knows where they are. If you want to disrupt enemy communications in a conflict, you target the satellites. And because military satellites are expensive, there aren't many of them. Losing even one is a significant blow. Starshield offers a different approach. There are thousands of Starlink satellites. If you're using Starshield, your communications aren't dependent on any single satellite. If one gets destroyed or jammed, your signal automatically routes through others. The constellation provides redundancy. Resilience. It's much harder to completely disrupt a system with thousands of nodes than one with a handful of large satellites. This has obvious military applications: battlefield communications, coordination of forces, intelligence gathering, drone operations. Modern warfare increasingly depends on reliable connectivity. Soldiers need data. Commanders need situational awareness. Weapon systems need control links. Starshield can provide all of this. But it raises questions too. Is SpaceX becoming a military contractor? What does that mean for their civilian operations? If Starshield satellites are used in military operations, do they become legitimate targets? Does that put the entire Starlink constellation at risk in a conflict? What about international relations? Other countries might view Starlink differently if it's closely integrated with US military capabilities. SpaceX's position is that Starshield is a separate service. It uses some of the same infrastructure, but it's distinct from civilian Starlink. They argue that providing secure communications to governments and militaries is legitimate and important. That democracies need these capabilities. That they're not building weapons, just providing connectivity. Critics worry about the militarization of space. About private companies providing critical military infrastructure. About the precedent this sets. If the US has Starshield, will China develop something similar? Will Russia? Will this lead to an arms race in space-based communications and eventually anti-satellite capabilities? These are complex issues without easy answers. What's clear is that Starlink and Starshield represent a new era in space-based infrastructure. An era where private companies operate systems that have strategic importance. Where the line between commercial and military becomes blurred. Where the decisions of one company affect national security and international relations. SpaceX is navigating these waters, trying to balance commercial interests, government contracts, and the geopolitical implications of their technology. Whether they're succeeding, whether the approach is sustainable, remains to be seen. Fact number 28, deorbiting plan. One of the criticisms of satellite constellations is space junk. The more satellites you launch, the more potential debris you create. Satellites fail. They collide. They break apart. And all that debris stays in orbit, creating hazards for other spacecraft. This is a real problem. Low Earth orbit is getting crowded. And if we're not careful, we could create so much debris that certain orbital regions become unusable. This scenario is called Kessler syndrome. SpaceX is aware of this. They've designed Starlink satellites with end-of-life disposal in mind. Every Starlink satellite has a Hall-effect thruster. This is an electric propulsion system. It's efficient and reliable, and it's specifically there to deorbit the satellite when its operational life is over. Starlink satellites are designed to operate for about 5 years. When a satellite reaches the end of its life, or if it malfunctions, SpaceX commands it to deorbit. The Hall thruster fires. It lowers the satellite's orbit gradually. The satellite descends into thicker atmosphere. Atmospheric drag increases. The orbit decays faster. Eventually, the satellite re-enters. It burns up in the atmosphere. It's destroyed. Nothing remains to become space junk. This is responsible. It's what every satellite operator should do, but not all do. Some older satellites don't have propulsion systems. When they die, they just drift. They stay in orbit for years, decades even, depending on their altitude. They become obstacles, hazards, junk. SpaceX has also demonstrated that they can deorbit satellites quickly if needed. If a satellite fails shortly after launch, they can bring it down within weeks or months. They don't leave dead satellites in orbit. They clean up after themselves. There's also a passive safety feature. Starlink satellites orbit relatively low, between 350 and 600 kilometers altitude. At these altitudes, atmospheric drag is still significant. Even if a satellite completely failed, even if it lost all power and couldn't deorbit itself, atmospheric drag would eventually bring it down naturally. It might take a few years, but it wouldn't stay in orbit forever like satellites in higher orbits. This is part of SpaceX's environmental responsibility argument. Yes, they're launching thousands of satellites, but they're not contributing to long-term space debris. Every satellite is designed to come down. Every satellite will be removed from orbit. The constellation is temporary in a sense. Individual satellites come and go. The system persists, but the specific hardware is constantly being replaced and safely disposed of. Whether this is sufficient, whether the scale of Starlink raises other concerns, is debatable. But at least SpaceX is thinking about the problem. They're building disposal capability into their satellites from the start. They're demonstrating active deorbiting. They're trying to operate responsibly in an increasingly crowded environment. It's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative of leaving thousands of dead satellites in orbit with no plan for removal. Fact number 29. The phased array technology. Let's talk about how Starlink actually works, because the technology is fascinating. Specifically, let's talk about the phased array antennas. These are both on the satellites and on the user terminals, those dishes people install to receive Starlink service. Traditional satellite dishes are parabolic. They're curved. They focus signals onto a receiver, and they have to point at the satellite. If you've ever had satellite TV, you know this. The dish points at a specific spot in the sky. It doesn't move. The satellite is in geostationary orbit, so it's always in the same place relative to the ground. Simple. Starlink doesn't work that way. Starlink satellites are in low Earth orbit. They're moving. Fast. They zip across the sky. A given satellite is only overhead for a few minutes before it disappears over the horizon. Your connection is constantly switching from one satellite to another, maybe multiple times per minute. If you used a traditional dish, you'd need it to constantly track satellites. It would need motors. It would need to pivot and turn, following the satellite across the sky, then quickly slewing to lock onto the next one. Mechanically complex, prone to failure, expensive. Phased array antennas solve this electronically. The Starlink dish doesn't move. It's flat. It sits there. But inside, it has hundreds or thousands of tiny antennas. Each one can be controlled individually. By adjusting the timing and phase of the signal going to each antenna element, the system can create a directional beam. It can point that beam electronically, without any moving parts. As a satellite moves across the sky, the phased array adjusts. It steers the beam to follow the satellite. When the satellite gets too low on the horizon, the system switches to a different satellite, instantly repointing the beam in a new direction. All electronically, all in milliseconds. The user doesn't notice. The connection continues seamlessly. This technology came from military applications. Phased array radar, missile defense systems, the ability to track multiple targets simultaneously, to steer beams quickly without moving the antenna physically. It's sophisticated. It's expensive to develop. But SpaceX has made it work in a consumer product. The satellites use phased arrays too. They're steering beams down to specific user terminals. They're managing thousands of connections simultaneously. They're coordinating with other satellites to hand off users as they move. It's a complex dance of beams and signals and timing, all happening invisibly, automatically, constantly. This is why Starlink can work. Why it can provide low-latency internet despite using moving satellites. Why it can handle thousands of users without traditional ground station limitations. The phased array technology makes it possible. It's one of those enabling technologies that doesn't get much attention, but is absolutely critical to the system functioning at all. Military technology, repurposed for civilian use. Radar concepts applied to internet connectivity. Another example of SpaceX taking existing ideas and applying them in new ways to solve problems others thought were unsolvable. Fact number 30, projected launch rate. Let's end with a number that captures SpaceX's ambition and capability. In 2025, SpaceX is targeting over 170 orbital launches. 170. That's more than 3 launches per week on average. That's more than one launch every 2 days. To put this in perspective, consider that the entire world used to launch maybe 80 to 90 times per year total, all countries and companies combined. SpaceX alone is now launching twice that. They're launching more than everyone else on Earth combined. Russia, China, Europe, Japan, India, all of them together, and SpaceX is doing more. This is the result of everything we've talked about. Reusability, rapid turnaround, high launch cadence, vertical integration, efficient manufacturing. It all comes together to enable a launch rate that would have seemed absurd just a decade ago. Most of these launches are Starlink missions. SpaceX launching their own satellites on their own rockets. But there are also commercial missions, NASA missions, military missions. SpaceX has become the dominant launch provider, not just for their own needs, but for everyone else's too. If you have a satellite, there's a good chance you're launching it on a Falcon 9. 170 launches means 170 opportunities for something to go wrong. 170 times they need everything to work correctly. The rocket, the payload, the weather, the range, the recovery. It's a testament to how reliable Falcon 9 has become that they can attempt this cadence. It also represents an enormous amount of hardware moving through their system. Boosters being prepared, launched, recovered, refurbished, relaunched. Second stages being manufactured and integrated. Fairings being recovered and reused. Payloads being processed. The logistics are staggering. And this is just 2025. SpaceX's goal is to increase launch rate even further. When Starship becomes operational, when they're catching and reusing boosters within hours, the cadence could increase to hundreds of launches per year. Maybe thousands eventually, though that's far in the future and depends on demand. This transforms access to space. It means space is no longer a rare, special, once-in-a-while occurrence. It's routine. It's constant. It's infrastructure. Like trucks on a highway. Like planes at an airport. Launches happening continuously, reliably, efficiently. That's the vision. That's what SpaceX is building toward. 170 launches in 2025. Each one represents cargo reaching orbit. Satellites deployed. Science enabled. Communications improved. Progress toward Mars. It's the culmination of 2 decades of work. Of failure and success. Of learning and iteration. Of refusing to accept that space has to be hard and expensive and rare. 170 launches. 3 per week. More than the entire world used to do. And it's just the beginning. And that brings us to the end of our journey through 30 unbelievable facts about SpaceX. From a failed trip to Russia that sparked a company, to catching rockets with chopstick arms. From a Tesla floating through space to satellites providing internet to remote villages. From Booster 1062 flying 20 times to the dream of making humanity multiplanetary. SpaceX represents something more than engineering achievement. It represents a different way of thinking about what's possible. A refusal to accept that space exploration has to be the exclusive domain of governments. A belief that with smart design, rapid iteration, and willingness to accept risk, we can do things that seem impossible. Rest well and dream of stars.